It's not service versus sales. It's,
right.
Hey, we're a team. We're going to do better when we get along with each other. Now, every day might not be pretty or perfect.
Right.
But everybody can be a professional and recognize that it shouldn't be like divorced parents with the kid being the client in the middle, because that's just ridiculous. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Ridiculously Amazing Insurance Agent Podcast. And I'm here with Mr. the one and only Mayor of Insurance Town, aka performance partner to the rich and famous of the insurance space, Heath Sharon. How are you doing, Heath?
Hey, how are you? I'm doing well. I am doing well. I'm having a bad hair day, so you're stuck with Hat Heath today, but that's all right.
Well, I'm in Wisconsin right now, so yes.
There you go.
It's a beautiful day in Wisconsin. Not really. It's kind of cold and rainy, but that's all right, because we are here in the launch of your very first course, launch month. And do you want to tell our loyal listeners what you've been back in the laboratory, baking, cooking, creating?
Yeah, I've been putting all the ingredients together for a course built around commercial production. And whether it's account managers or producers or even managers and leaders in that department, I think it's something that actually, I know it is near and dear to my heart. I think it's something that'll impact a lot of people in our space, because I think there's a lot out there. And this course focuses on everything from prospecting and building your pipeline all the way to working with underwriters, closing the deal, and even what happens after you close that deal and that customer experience. So there's a lot that goes into this course. It's been a lot of long hours in the lab, as you would say, or in the kitchen, or whatever analogy you want to use. But it's been a lot of fun for me.
Awesome. And just so everybody knows, July 15th, 2022 through July 30th, 31st, I forget how many days are in July now. We're doing a special if you want to buy the course outright. Until then, you can also get Heath Sharon live in your agency or virtually in your agency to talk to your commercial producers. But today we're going to dive into one of the topics we have in the course, which is in the bonus section.
Woo-hoo, bonus, yes.
And so time management, right, which we're really well known for, is our time management strategies of how do you manage your time? How do you manage the agency's time? And so we're just going to kind of answer a few questions, I think, from people that we've gotten as far as producer time management. And I know you and I have worked a lot on this as far as how it all works. So if you could talk to our listeners about how a typical normal producer manages their time. Let's just start there. In your experience, or how they don't manage their time.
I have to be really careful on this, because I'm going to upset a lot of my future clients here. I feel like if I say this, if we're going to be real honest or real transparent here, a lot of commercial producers, they don't manage their time very well. And so it's one of those things. And I could say that it's one of those things, like I could say it because I've been there, and I am one of those. I struggle with this myself, and I have struggled with this myself, I should say. And so a lot of times they don't. And so a lot of commercial producers are out. So they're running so fast, like their hair's on fire or whatever it might be, trying to get process in the door and focusing on what's going on next and what's happening. And they're floating around the office and trying to give as much information out as they can on napkins or on scrap pieces of paper or whatever it might be. And just trying to get by, I feel like, so many times. And there's no organization to it. And there's no method to the madness, I feel like. And so one of the things that I talk about in working with commercial producers is, number one, is having that management of the time, but also working 90 days out, at least 60 days out, not just last minute. Because usually if you get an X date on somebody that renews tomorrow, it's probably not the best prospect for you. So we talk about qualifying the prospect in there. But yeah, to answer your original question, there's not a whole lot of time management that goes on. So that's why when we were building this course and I got to the bonus sections, I was like, I cannot write the section on time management for producers. That's got to be something written by the time management queen herself and you. And so I bounce that back towards you.
Yeah. So I got to dive in with the producer time management. And, it's super interesting to me because, as you're like in my book of clients, we have a couple $1 million producers, and they manage their time meticulously from prospecting. They spend X amount of hours prospecting. They have meetings with their account managers. It is not chaos. It is a very intentional, meticulous process. And I say that's why they got to $1 million in revenue. That's a huge accomplishment. And because they defend that process so greatly, it's not just running in and dumping it on the account manager. It's like they want to be 60 days out. They want to be on top of everything because it's sort of a good reflection of them. And, I find a lot of producers run off of what I call hope is their strategy. Like they hope to bump into somebody today and they hope that this closes and they hope this, and they're not maybe doing the follow-ups that they should be, or they're not out at a certain number of networking events. To me anyway, sales is a numbers game, right? So the more business cards I give out, the more appointments I have, the more people I meet, the more calls I make, it's all going to funnel in. And I think that a lot of producers kind of go on the like, I'm cool, I'm likable, people will buy from me, let's hope for the best.
Right. I think another part of that goes back to so many, the other side of that, a lot of commercial producers I talk to, they feel like every client's going to close.
Oh, yeah.
And so a lot of times you spend so much time spinning your wheels and this guy's going to do it, this guy's going to do it, that you end up wasting a lot of time.
Yeah, and that kind of goes into some of the top 5 time management traps that we get into. And so one of the first ones that we list in this blog article and talk about in the course is just chasing prospects that aren't a good fit. And so I will say this, I think that there are prospects that it's black and white. We should not write them. And I feel like most producers, once you get seasoned a bit, you back away, right? Like the green ones, they always bump into the underwater basket weaving dynamite shop that is in 17 different states and international and only takes cash. Like, yes, like green people do that, but other ones are like, yeah, cool. I can't get into like the bar that's also doing like bear fighting. Like I'm good. But there's this gray area, I feel like, and I'd love to hear what you think about this one. Like, here's an example. You get a referral from a good client, but the prospect isn't a good fit, but we feel obligated.
Yeah, that's a tough one. And I think we can get in that trap of chasing that client down because we're like, I don't want to upset my client, so to speak. I don't think there's anything wrong with going to that person and saying, hey, I really appreciate your business and I really appreciate the referral. However, I don't think that I would be a great fit for this client, or my agency would be a good fit, or my team would be a good fit. Maybe there's another team within your own agency that focuses on that niche or that clientele. But I think there's a matter of finding out a good route for them to go to before you just jump out and say, sure, I'll take it. I think if you can develop that plan and let them know the reasons why you can't do it instead of saying no or yes. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I think you should walk away from that stuff just because it's just be upfront and honest and point them, say they should go to Progressive. It's a much better fit for them. Here's why. And then you walk away. But you got to remember, bad prospect, bad client. You're not just having a sale that's bad, and you think you're appeasing somebody, but honestly, a referral is a referral. And with commercial clients, they're used to this stuff already. They're desensitized. They know that every referral that comes into them isn't good. Most of the time, you're not going to have like a huge issue on your hands. It's just the identifying upfront what the scoop is. Or here's another one. You get a lead that looks good, but after you're kind of in the throes of underwriting, it turns out not to be good, but you've already invested a lot of time in it. So the instinct is like, well, let's just finish it. I have this kind of market for it and you've already spent time on it. So let's just get on the books and get paid for it and go. But what's your take on that?
I think you start off, it's hard. It's very, very hard on this, but you have to cut your losses on some of that. No matter how much you've invested into it, if you go ahead and go through it, like you said, I've already invested 3 weeks of my life into it, I got to write it. That's going to cause a lot more headaches for you and your agency. It's going to put bad taste in your mouth with your underwriter. It's going to be like, I told you this was questionable and you force fed it on me or you made me do it. Then I think it's going to create a bad relationship there. And I'm all about, especially in this course too, is working with your underwriters and making sure you have a good relationship there too. And then the last thing I'd say on that is if it doesn't fit within the agency and the team culture or the team appetite at the agency, it's going to be in a bad move all the way around. You're going to upset your account manager. You're going to upset the boss or the manager. I just think sometimes as hard as it is, you have to cut and move on.
Yeah. And a little like caveat to that too is the person's in a pickle and they're nice. And so you're like, they're so nice and I can help them. And so the helping side comes out and you lose all logic. And that's where it's also difficult because you're helping and they're nice. So they're nice. So you want to keep talking to them. But remember, when you say yes to this, you're saying no to other things that you could be working on. And like the last one I think is the most common, which is you're not on track for your sales goal. So I work every lead because I'm desperate. So when you're operating your pipeline at a desperation, not preparation, you're going to start taking that stuff. And I tell people, hey, if the leads are not good that you're working on, I'd rather you take a 0 for the month and recalibrate, right? And that's going to be your keys to success. But you can waste an awful lot of time on those not great fits for the agency. You look up and it's been like 4 hours and you still don't have a home for it. You have to kind of manage your time. So another one I have on here is prospecting only when you need to. So times are good, leads are in, I'm busy, right? I got lots of stuff going on. And then all of a sudden you clear your pipeline and you're done, right? So I actually think it's a big waste of time to roller coaster prospect, because to me, prospecting is done most efficiently when done consistently, so that you're constantly following up. You're not following up when the pipeline's dry. And I'm curious what you think about that.
No, I completely agree. And that's where a lot of the beginnings of this came from, is working with some of these agencies. And I'd hear that from the producers of like, everything's really good. And all of a sudden they would bottom out. And going back to your other thing, some of the other clients that we work with that have those $1 million, $2 million revenue books, they still prospect. And people think, oh, once I make it, I've arrived and kick my feet up, or I can go golfing every day. I don't have to. No, if you're at that place, you haven't arrived yet. You just think you have. And so
you haven't hit your potential. You're comfortable. You're trying to get comfort.
And so I think, again, it goes back to, I talk about in the course of having at least 300 X states in your pipeline at all times. If that drops below that, you close some of those, you got to constantly be updating that. And I still think you should have at least one day a week out in the field doing some sort of prospecting, whether it's cold calling or working referrals or getting out knocking doors, going to networking events, whatever it might be. I still think you should always be building your pipeline.
Yeah, it's like Kevin Painter model, right? Don't eat lunch. Don't eat lunch at your desk. Just go have lunch by yourself somewhere. You always bump into somebody, and you can build a nice little business that way. I also think too, the idea that the exercise I walk commercial producers do sometimes is like, hey, Heath, imagine one of your kids needed a major medical scenario and it was $100,000. And you had a crystal ball and you knew that in 6 months this was going to happen. What would you do differently right now? Because the idea would be like, oh, I prospect everything. I'd be out there. I'd be working 12-hour days to get as many leads in the pipeline so I could have that money, because I'm not going to let my kids suffer, right?
Right.
So I'm always like, what's the difference today? The difference today is you don't know that that's going to happen, but it could happen. And if you had the intensity of prospecting and selling, like the worst month of your life is going to happen in 6 months from now, you change your behavior. But a lot of times, like, we get comfortable and we get soft and we get settled in. So we don't go hard, because it's like, well, I'm on track with my sales goal. My pipeline's okay, but I'm going to take it a little easy today. You never know when somebody's going to need something that you care about. You never know when sometimes the worst day of your life is going to happen. And so if you prospect with that intensity all the time, it's a different ballgame.
Yeah, I look at it like that producer's always on fourth down, trying to get that extra yard or two at that last minute at all times. When I'd rather be on first down all the time, or trying to go 10 yards every time on the first down, instead of getting all the way to fourth down and trying to go for it instead of punting. I just look at it sports analogy wise that, you don't want to be in that place in your career or in your prospecting. You should always be ahead of the game and always be working your pipeline and always be adding to your pipeline.
Yeah, I love that. And I can't tell you how many times I've forced producers to make 10 extra cold calls. Like just do 10 more. They want to give up. They do 90.
Yeah.
You're almost at 100. And somewhere in that last 10 calls, there's a lottery ticket.
Yep.
And I'm like, see, you would have missed out if you'd given up. So if you commit to 100, do 100. Don't shortchange yourself. Sometimes there's magic in that last push, right? This one I think is probably the most common. The targets that we have for sales are too small. So they're going after small fish as opposed to bigger targets, either because they're scared, they're uncertain. Let's be honest, the easy stuff is the small stuff. It comes to us, it's a sort of turnkey. And so they don't intentionally go after the bigger fish, which are harder, take a little while longer to get, but definitely bump your pipeline a lot more.
Yeah, I think, again, it goes back to trying to go the easy route or the comfortable route. And again, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago on our podcast with Raghav of you could lose a lot of money chasing these smaller accounts and spending a lot of time. And to be real honest with you, whether you talk to the biggest agency producer in the country or the smallest one, you're going to spend the same amount of time no matter what size the account is, I feel like. Whether you're working on a 6-figure account or a smaller account, you're going to have the same amount of touches. It's just a matter of which one's bringing you the most revenue. And I think if you're focusing on small accounts, you're losing money for your agency. And so Again, not saying anything wrong with small business, not at all. But I just think you have to be careful on how much time you're spending on those smaller accounts.
Well, and I think that there's the idea that smaller accounts find you, the larger accounts you go find. So where you're putting your prospecting effort into should be of larger variety. And that might bring you out of your comfort zone a little bit, but that's okay because the first couple of times you do it, it'll be weird. And then it magically comes together. So not embracing technology, right? So a lot of producers feel that, oh, data entry, those are the girls and they do it. And I'm a producer and that's like, I don't do paperwork. And you say, hey, you know what? Again, those $1 million producers I know use the snot out of technology because they power themselves by technology. They're adamant about their CRM tool. They're adamant about their pipeline being meticulous. They're adamant about knowing each and every detail in there so that they can go back to that person next year and talk about their wife and their kids and their spouse's names and their dog's names and know every little thing about them. And they know what gifts to send them and they know everything by being powered up by a database, as opposed to a lot of the producers, I think, that don't hit their potential. They're just with a notepad out, like crumpled up pieces of paper everywhere, missing prospects, missing follow-up, missing this, missing that. And they sort of get by because they can be charming, but they're not necessarily strategic of the diligence of, hey, in order to do a good job for you, I'm going to need this by this date so that we can submit on target.
Yeah, let's just be honest. Everybody has an app. Your CRM has an app. Your agency management system has an app. Whatever tools you're using out there have an app. So there's no real excuse. So you could download that app on your phone. And for example, our HubSpot app has a business card scanner. So if I'm out and about, whether at a trade show or an agent's office, I meet somebody, I can take a picture of that and it stores everything right then and there. If I'm talking to one of my prospects or one of my clients and they tell me, hey, next weekend is our anniversary, I could put that in my notes and say, hey, and I could text them next week, hey, happy anniversary to you and your lovely bride or your wonderful husband, whatever it might be. There's no real excuse there not to use technology.
I think even if it's things like digital notepads or voice recording or email templates, like you want to be as automated as you can be, because that just means that there's a system, and that when you have a system, you're always going to not lose any leads. And you're working your butt off for these leads. They should be categorized and made sure that they're nurtured.
I mean, as simple as like my wife will pull up an email, just voice record a bunch of notes and emails, send it to herself, just so when she gets back to the office, she can just cut and paste it into her CRM. I mean, there's little things that you could do that are simple, and it takes her all of 30 seconds to do.
I know. I just feel like a lot of producers like they avoid it. Like, oh, well, I don't use the management system. That's not for me. That's for them. And I was like, there's a lot of good stuff in there though for you if you try.
Right. Right.
The next one, and then I'm going to do a bonus one. So this is the final one in here, but this will foreshadow next week's piece of content is from Heath on how to prospect. The week after that, Heath and I are mashing up on a piece of content of how to get producers and account managers to get along, because that's a fun one.
Oh, yeah.
But this one is important. It's launching into your week without a schedule. So waking up on Monday morning, getting into the office and looking at your email and almost like getting caught up from the weekend. So you start your Monday behind. And then there's no plan. So really Monday you get organized, and then Tuesday, well, all the stuff starts coming in for renewals and everything else. And you're sort of, your week's running you, and you're not really intentionally running your week. You're not prepared for meetings. You're not looking at your pipeline saying I'm on point or I'm off point. It's sort of that intentional space of Friday or whenever over the weekends, everybody does it someplace different, of really looking at your week the next week and being super intentional of, I know what I have, I know what I need to prepare for. I'm ready to have a great week.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think this is one of the most common things that producers deal with is launching, again, go back to time management, goes back to here, not having that plan. And it's okay to say Mondays and Fridays are my office days, my productive days. That's fine. But I think you still have an intentional plan on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday to get out. And
what are you going to do Monday and Friday, right? Like you should be like, I need to get this stuff done Monday and Friday so that the team can work the renewals. And like a lot of producers, I think, forget they're part of a team.
Yep.
It's just like, well, it's my client. And I'm like, no, it's the agency's client. And there's a service person and a processing person and an accounting person and all the other people that are there to serve the client, but they can only do as good as if the information that you give them.
Right. And even I struggled with this as a producer early on in days. And I finally got to a place where, like Fridays, I would just be, okay, here's, at the end of the day, Friday is their close down or your, what do you want to call it, to say, okay, Monday, I've got to get these 20 things done sometime next week. Prioritize when those need done and put that on the calendar for Monday, whatever days it is, because we understand there's also work that has to get done, or gathering information for others, or other things besides prospecting. But you just got to schedule those things in and figure out when the best time to do those, and find that time to do your prospecting, whether it's an hour a week, 2 hours a week, a whole day a week, whatever it is. Schedule that in and make sure you honor that time, because it's really easy to push it like, oh, I'll prospect tomorrow. I've got to make sure I do this first.
Well, and I will say this too. I find out that prospecting is the first thing to go when you have a crazy schedule.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, I'll get to prospecting later. And it's like, well, like, again, you don't know. You could be scratching a lottery ticket. That's the biggest account you've ever had. Or we get sucked into servicing, because when you're behind a desk, servicing will always find you. When you're out and about, like, you're not as in the know. You let the servicing team handle a lot of it too.
Yep, you're exactly right.
So I'm a big believer producers should have a written schedule every Friday. That's like, they at least know what to expect for their next week. They know what appointments they have. They know what's working, what's not working.
But I will say, before you get into the bonus, I know without a shadow of a doubt, there are some listeners right now that are saying, that's real cute, Heath and Kelly, that you want us to have this schedule, but it's just not going to happen. But I'll go back to what Kelly said. As we've stepped into 1,500 agencies or more, the good ones that have $1 million revenue where you want to be, or $2 million in revenue where you want to be, have a schedule. Mm-hmm. They focus 100%. On these things we're talking about. So you might be sitting there thinking, oh, that's real cute, Kelly, I'm not going to have this schedule. Well, then you're never going to have $1 million revenue book. You're never going to have a $2 million revenue book. And I say that not to dog you out or talk trash to you, but I'm saying that to say it is what happens with successful producers.
Yeah. And what I would say is like, maybe it feels uncomfortable to have structure, but your schedule can change. It's about the preparedness of knowing, okay, I'm going to go present this quote. I'm going to go meet this prospect, whatever it is, so that it's on your radar screen. You don't get bit in the butt by it. Right. Like, that's the big thing. And our last one is, I think there's so much time spent, like, literally dealing with producer and account manager issues.
Yeah. Agreed.
So it's like, whether it's going to the owner and being like, this isn't working, whether it's fighting between the two of them, both parties, by the way, both parties. It's not just one, it's both. And it's kind of disappointing and sad, because both parties don't really have the luxury of spending this much time arguing with each other. And by the way, both are right. That's the problem.
Yep. I think that's a big issue that we've always had, whether it's underwriters and marketing reps, or account managers and producers, or staff and ownership, whatever it might be. There's always been that rub. But yes, in a commercial producers, that account manager and producer relationship is a big rub. I think a lot of it comes down to and begins and ends with communication.
The other thing is, it also begins and ends by both parties realizing they're a team. Like, It's not service versus sales. It's right. Hey, we're a team. We're going to do better when we get along with each other. Now, every day might not be pretty or perfect. Right. But everybody can be a professional and recognize that it shouldn't be like divorced parents with the kid being the client in the middle, because that's just ridiculous. And for account managers, you need to be part of sales enablement, not disablement. So you need to be working to grow and to sell and to help this along. Producers, you also need to give enough information and clean information and be responsive to your account manager so that they don't have to scramble. Like, there should be a code of respect between each other of producers are going to respond within 24 hours. Even if they're on the road, they can say, hey, I got your email, I'm going to respond in full tomorrow. Or, hey, you know what, I'm still waiting to hear from the client. Let me follow up with them again. Like, there needs to be, but I find that this relationship is so unclear a lot of times that's where the conflict comes into play.
Yeah, I think you nailed it with the key word in respect there. And I think so many times on both sides, like you said, there's not enough respect for, oh, he's just out there running around, or she's out there just running around playing golf and high-fiving and kissing babies, and that's all they're doing. Or on the flip side of that is, all she does is this, or he does is that, and the account manager doesn't understand what I'm doing, and there's no respect there. And it doesn't matter, I'll just throw it on a napkin and get it to him. I think there's got to be clear respect and boundaries there of saying, okay, and I think the expectations have to be communicated. When you give me a submission, I expect to have these things. And as a producer, you have to set the expectation of, if I get you these things, I expect it back at this time, or whatever that looks like for you. I think you have to communicate that and be respectful of one another. and realize that you can't do one without the other.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that there's also the idea of showing gratitude for both parties, right? Like if the account manager helps you renew a big account, get them a bottle of wine, like do something nice.
Yeah.
If the producer hits a big account, make sure to make a big deal about how excited you are to work on it, not another client. Like it's all in control, and everybody stop banding together like you're creating your own little mini like unions inside the agency of like, let's break that down and work together. It's too stressful, too silly, to be honest with you, and doesn't yield any positive result.
Yep, 100%. That's a good bonus one because it's a big one.
It's a huge one, and no one thinks of it that way. They always think about like, well, how am I going to get 2 extra hours in a day? Well, not fighting with an account manager is probably a good one.
Yeah.
Just something to think about.
Yeah, I think going back to your philosophy of slow down to speed up, if you spend time, let's say 30 minutes a week or 30 minutes a day, whatever, have scheduled time with your team, account manager and producer, or having people that are on that team, sit down and 30 minutes at a time and lay those things out. I think it'll prevent later on having all these problems and issues and things pop up if you have it scheduled. So again, if you take that time to schedule those meetings and have it on the calendar on a regular basis, it'll prevent this other crap from popping up.
Yeah. I mean, because think about it, an account manager comes into a full day of activities already booked for them. And then you walk in and it's like, drop everything, I'm here. And they're working on a big renewal for another producer or the owner. And it's like, okay, what would you like? And it's just kind of disrespectful, to say the least. I think that instead, if you just chill out and say, hey, I'd like to meet with you about these renewals, when can we meet? When it makes it much nicer for you. And then they can prepare too and look into the accounts, and it actually saves a ton of time.
100%. And I think the agent could benefit from that as well, knowing what to look for, what they need. If you don't let them know, hey, I need loss runs or I need this supplemental app, you got to let them know and communicate that. So I think a regular meeting is important. And we talk about that in the course.
Yeah, absolutely. So Heath, if people want to find out more about the course, can you let them know how to find you?
Sure.
And they can talk to you about the course if you'd like.
They could email Heath at agencyperformancepartners.com. You could also find me on LinkedIn. That'd be an easy way of doing it. Or you could go to the website and find out about the course when it does launch on June. If you're listening to this after July 15th, you could jump on the website or go to Agency Performance Partners or any social channel or YouTube channel. There's a million ways to find out about this course. I thought that was a trick question.
No, I just want to make sure that's how other podcasts do it. Where can they find you?
Right.
They can find you right here, but I thought we should tell them how to find you.
Yeah.
Even more than right.
There's a million ways, I feel like.
Go find Heath and go find commercial sales training. So check out next week when we talk a little bit about commercial prospecting, led by the one and only Mr. Heath Sharon. And then after that, we're going to dive into what I hope becomes like as big as the launch of Top Gun. Like I hope agencies sit and put it up on the screen and watch our podcast on how account managers and producers get along with like popcorn on Twizzlers, and like everyone's just ready to learn how to make their relationships better.
If you've got any questions for either one of us that relates to any of these topics, can they email you on those or me?
Email us, send a bat signal, courier pigeon. Snail mail is a little tough these days, but we'll take it. Yeah, anywhere you see us, just drop us a question. We're happy to answer it for you guys.
Yeah, we love answering those questions. They're fun.
Thank you all for listening. Watch for more details, and we will be in touch soon. Bye, everybody.